The COVID-19 pandemic has created unique challenges and insights with regards to estate planning, elder law, and financial planning. On today's Vital Living Forum, we talk with Jose Rodriguez and Alexander Hernandez about this new legal and financial norm that's been created and the lessons that we've learned. Welcome to you both. I want to start out by talking a little bit about pre-pandemic and how uncomfortable people generally have been when it comes to financial planning and estate planning. Why was that?
I think at least from the financial side, I can't speak on the legal side, but the financial side, it was always too much work, don't have the assets, the time, so you would put it off. And the times I would sit down with individuals to begin that planning, it became an uncomfortable conversation. Oh, I have to do a budget. I have to talk about life expectancy, and it's a little bit morbid sometimes, a little bit uncomfortable.
Precisely. When you're talking about estate planning, you're talking about the elephant in the room and having to make everybody see that elephant. And the elephant is death. Nobody wants to talk about dying. Nobody wants to talk about what assets they have, where they're going to go, who they're going to leave it to, who are they going to, well, problematically leave out of their will. So it was quite a chore, and still is quite a chore, to get someone to talk about mortality. Facing that is critical to planning. What I can tell you also is that once you clear that hurdle, things begin to cascade, and again, decisions are made. But again, gearing someone up to talk and to be understanding of the range of things, whether you're dealing with not just, everybody thinks it's just about wills, but it's not about wills. It's about advanced healthcare directives. What do you want to happen to you, and who do you want make decisions on your healthcare? If you can't, powers of attorney. Whether you're going to go through guardianship because somebody has lost their capacity to make decisions on, number one, your health care, number two, your finances, your property. And who does it go to? I had an interesting discussion with someone from the clerk's office who said, Jose, if you get a chance to talk to anyone, don't just talk about old people, because it's not about old people that estate planning is about. Yeah, we call it elder law, but it's not all about that. Talk to folks and tell them the situation that we saw here more than once. I was at the clerk's office, and they said, make sure that if they've got kids in their 20s who are working, who have bank accounts, have them place them on a POD or a TOD, pay on death or transfer on death, because otherwise any amount of money that the children who may pass before the parents have will wind up having to go through probate, and you'll wind up having to spend a pretty penny.
Let's talk about that too, because I think a lot of people don't realize the consequences of not having these conversations now up front. What have you seen when it comes to people who just were unprepared and ended up in a courtroom in probate?
Depending on the amount of money that they have, I hate to say, because Florida provides for a simplified method of administration, and then again, formal administration. And depending, the filing fees are different, and when you're talking about a formal administration, the court has to appoint a personal representative, and a personal representative is required to hire a lawyer. So now you're talking big bucks, because you've got to hire a lawyer, even in a simple estate, to go and help you out. If you've just got a simple summary administration, you might be able to do it yourself if you know what assets, but it's still quite a hassle, and it's still quite a difficult thing to do right on the spur of the moment, within the grieving process. It's just not something you want to fall into. So talk to your kids about POD and TOD. Talk about, again, even your kids having some type of a plan where there's maybe joint ownership, so that, again, the difficulty is avoided.
And then, of course, right as we are trying to get people on board with financial planning and getting themselves, getting their papers in order, so to speak, the pandemic hit. Yeah. And then we see a rise in things like fraud and scams. And is that something that comes with disaster? I mean, we've seen it during hurricanes here in Florida, but with the pandemic, are we seeing that rise just like it's another natural disaster?
You know, I haven't read any studies, but I would hazard a guess that it's probably a direct correlation. As recessions, disasters, calamities hit, you have fraud, you have theft increase. I mean, it's natural. There's pressure on an economic system. Those variables within it react accordingly.
And all I can tell you is that as far as elder law and elder practice is concerned, we tend, as we age, to want to believe in the best amongst us. And that basically renders us, in many events, targets. We become targets of individuals that are unscrupulous and they just want to make money. It's the same thing that happens when folks take your Social Security and they wind up going after your returns, filing a fake return with your social number and getting back what you're entitled to.
You know, and it's you mentioned the scams and frauds with elders, particularly during this pandemic. It seems as if there are more people trying to get creative about separating people from their money. And that's why it's really important to keep, as you mentioned, Jose, keeping your family involved and keeping your family engaged in what you're doing financially.
Oh, absolutely. And I will confess that, you know, there is a saying in Spanish, en casa de herrero cuchillo de palo. In other words, in the blacksmith's house, all the cutlery is made out of wood. Okay? In other words, oftentimes those of us who know or who work in the system are the last ones to have wills. Right. And I will tell you that my family, my wife and I, our wills are the last will, the one that's actually in effect right now, goes back to 1998. And our children have grown. Our estate planning basically was all, what do we do with our kids? What do we do to leave our money in trust for the kids? Well, the kids are now grown up. Our kids are both lawyers. They're well on their way. They know what they're doing, I hope.
We all hope.
You know, but the thing about it is that we have just had to revamp, redo, and we're going to sign some new documents. Not only the last will and testament and the trusts, but also the ancillary documents that I talked about: powers of attorney, advance directives, DNR, do not resuscitate orders, all those types of things. But again, just because you did it once doesn't mean you're done, because time marches on. And as time marches on, your needs and your family needs change. So you've got to have your antenna on and up and recognize that as times change, as your family changes, your estate planning needs change as well.
And financially, with your children, your child, or someone that you trust, a family member, it's important to make sure that somebody else has a little bit of oversight. If it's your kids, pick your favorite, and you have to have someone who is connected to what you're doing financially. Is that a smart move?
Oh my God, it's very important. You know, I always say when we meet with families, I'd love to have the family together at the meeting if possible. The more communication, the less problems later on. And there's always going to be challenges. And unfortunately, the more that you save, the more assets that pile up, the more problems build up. So absolutely, the more communication, the better. And if you can get the one child that maybe takes care of you a little bit more, that cares a little bit more, then yeah, absolutely. It's a plus.
Absolutely. Well, it is time for us to take a break, and in our next segment, we're going to discuss how to create financial and legal plans. So stay with us. Welcome back to this Vital Living Forum on the legal and financial planning in a post-pandemic environment. My guests are Jose Rodriguez and Alexander Hernandez. And in this segment, we're going to summarize how individuals can begin creating their financial and legal plans. But first of all, Jose, I want to talk to you about some of the other programs that you've done here at Orange TV that are about the legal aspect of people putting together plans and what that's been.
There's been a number of programs that I had the opportunity to participate in. Some of them include a discussion of guardianship. Under Chapter 744 of the Florida statutes, the laws are absolutely very complex, because what I keep saying to my law students who I teach guardianship to at Berry Law School is that just as you think you've got everything solved, we human beings are tremendously capable of coming with some new approach. So Chapter 744 tries to take into account all aspects, and that's one of the shows that we did. We also talk about the law in general. We have, frankly, there's a number of topics dealing with elder law and with planning, and that are either more in detail and more precise about legal issues than what we're talking about here today. But those, I think, should be accessed through Orange TV.
Excellent. And Alex, when we start talking about the planning process for someone who is just beginning this journey, what are the financial documents, papers, mindset should they bring to that first planning meeting?
So they're basic documents that you should always at least know about or have in your possession that you bring to a meeting with an advisor. You definitely want to know what's coming in, what's going out, right, and your assets. It's a balance sheet and income statement and a budget. You know, euphemistically, that budget can be very complex or it can be very simple, but the idea is to have some basic documents that at least help you begin the planning process. I personally would do a spreadsheet where I had all my outflows and inflows, and my family hated it because I'd put it on the fridge. And every other day someone would put different nomenclature on their words that I didn't quite understand and rip it down. But it was the idea to start understanding what's happening, right, with the money flows. And from there you can begin the discussion, where do I need to focus on, where do I need to save, where should I be saving? And that's where the advisor or the planner should be helping you then kind of figure out the right direction, start that plan.
And the same thing legally, what should we have when we're starting out the journey?
Well, you have to remember that when you're going to go and hire a lawyer to do the paperwork for you, whatever you do, please, please, please resist the urge to go online and resist the urge to do it yourself. That's why there are competent professionals. They will make shortcut of the work that you have to do. But you have to start with having a financial planner. And you have to start with giving your financial planner, as well as your lawyer, the information of where all of your assets are. Because if you don't know where your assets are, you're not going to be able to plan where they're going to go later on when you're not around. So number one, make a list of your assets. Number two, make a list of your assets. And number three, make a list of your assets. And let me explain why, because when you've got all of that done, you make the lawyer's job easier. The lawyer spends less time, and if you're being charged on an hourly rate, you lessen the amount of money that you're going to have to outlay for a lawyer's time. You know, Abraham Lincoln said a lawyer's stock and trade are time and advice. Make sure that the lawyer uses, or that you use the lawyer's time wisely, and that you listen to the advice. Abraham Lincoln said it. I'm just, repeating it.
Well, I mean, Jose, you mentioned that you shouldn't grab documents off of online and start trying to do your own. But online is a great place to start to educate yourself. Is that?
It is.
Sure, sure. But it's not gospel.
Right.
It's not gospel.
But it's nice to have somebody come with a little bit of knowledge.
It helps you put it all together. I don't know if you guys have done a recent search online where you go to Google and you say finance and it pulls up 5 billion things. I mean, it's overwhelming. So definitely it's a starting point. I mean, there's great sites, FDIC.gov, FCC.gov, to help you start from like the financial side, the finance side. But you definitely want someone then to help you put it all together so that you don't go off this tangent into this, you know, I'm going to do some stock options. You don't even know what you're doing. Make sure you understand and someone's guiding you along the way. I got a life coach almost. In this case, it's a finance coach.
Right, right. But if you are looking for the professional that you're going to work with and you start online, again, 5 million people will come up.
Right.
What should you be looking for?
Okay. Oftentimes, the best way to find out who you should go to is by word of mouth. Talk to some of your friends, talk to your neighbors, find out who they've gone to and whether they're satisfied or not. Go on the floridabar.org and look up the lawyers and then find out whether or not they've had disciplinary action, because you can find that online. Again, it's FloridaBar, FLABAR.org, and you can wind up with all kinds of information that's coming at you regarding that particular lawyer. And you know what? Nicest thing is to find out that the lawyer you want has no disciplinary action in the last 10 years. So again, yes, research online, absolutely. Decision made after discussion with friends, family, and again, word of mouth.
Same thing for advisors, by the way. FINRA. There's many sites that you can do broker checks to
What's
see
a
if
FINRA?
FINRA. The acronym, I don't remember the acronym. You put me on the spot there. I don't remember the acronym, but
it's financial something.
Yeah,
Yes.
Financial Institution Regulatory Authority.
Right. There you go.
So it's where you can actually see if the individual you're speaking to has any disciplinary issues, any actions, how long they've been in business, how many licenses do they actually have, and are they licensed in that particular state? Mm-hmm. So yeah, a little bit of research, a little bit of communication with your friends and family, I think goes a long way.
And once you've found someone that you're comfortable with, maybe it's a recommendation from a friend, what kind of questions should you have in place in order to know that this is the right person, you're going in the right direction, that you're comfortable? What things should you ask, especially financially, starting out?
So me being from the finance side, I always ask about fees.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? What are the fees? What are you being paid? What do you charge? Are there fees internally that are going on? And what capacity are you helping me in, right? Are you a fiduciary in this relationship? How long have you been in business? And then, you know, what does your typical client look like? Do I fit that mold? I believe a lot of the advisors today get overwhelmed with clients, and you may not be one of those individuals that gets the attention that you need. So finding the right person is a combination of many things there that you need to be aware of and looking for.
Same thing with lawyers. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you don't get along, you need to move on.
It's a big one,
you know?
right?
And find someone else.
Yeah. You know what? It's a matter of trust. And that's what a fiduciary is all about. Somebody who's going to make reasonable decisions that you would ordinarily make. But again, trust is the biggest piece of the work.
And Alex, you mentioned fees and things like that with financial planners or financial people. Should you choose someone based on them saying, "Oh, you don't pay any fees. Oh, those are all paid by the company"? How big of a role should fees play in your decision making?
So I have these tenets that I follow. I always say that there's certain things that are controllable, right? Risk, you control risk to some degree. Taxes to some degree. Fees, you can control to some degree. How important of a piece are they? I think that goes back to the trust and the relationship. Right. If this is an individual that's worthy of your time, energy, and you say, I believe in this individual, I believe I've seen good work, then I would say, fees come into it, but they shouldn't be the deciding factor. I do say, as I get older, experience sometimes costs a little bit more, but saves a lot of energy and time at the end. So. Yeah.
Same with a lawyer. Nobody wants to pay a lawyer.
Absolutely, because if you've got a lawyer that needs to research every little bit, they're going to charge you for the research. But if you've got somebody, it's worth paying $425 an hour for a lawyer that has worked with the IRS in the trust department, that knows what potential income tax liabilities there are for what you're trying to accomplish in your estate plan, as opposed to somebody who's just fresh out. And the best thing they've got is that they took my class on guardianship and another class on wills and estates. Unless that person is working under someone in the law firm, you may get the benefit of a lower rate because you're talking about somebody who's an associate, and then the senior basically looks over all the documents, all the research, and you may wind up paying less. But nonetheless, if you've got a solo practitioner that is just fresh out, you may want to.
Here's where the finance side comes in. I'd rather pay him 2 hours at $400 than someone at 10 hours at $200.
Right.
Exactly.
That's true. That's true.
Exactly.
What a wonderful overview on how to create financial and legal plans. And remember, Orange TV has more in-depth shows on financial and legal planning. So when we return, we'll examine how laws and regulations can evolve during a disaster or a pandemic. Welcome back to Vital Living Forum, and today we're focusing on the financial and legal lessons that we've learned from the recent pandemic. And in our final segment here, we're going to examine how fluid laws and regulations can be during a pandemic. Joining me are Jose Rodriguez and Alexander Hernandez. And let's start by talking about some of the changes that happen. Is it normal for some of the regulations to change during a disaster?
Oh my God, absolutely. Absolutely. You have to have, the regulatory, the supervising authority is the government, right? Keeps track of what's going on in the system, and they do things to help facilitate the movement of either money or protect individuals so they don't go to complete, situations of destitute and hunger. So absolutely, those policies are always going to be changing and adjusting. And rightly so, you need to have them adjust based on the times.
Same thing with legal, or does
well,
that
income tax deadlines, which basically falls in both of our spheres. Income tax deadlines were extended and then extended again. Now, what I can tell you is that the courts have been prepared since 2013 for a pandemic. It started out with the H1N1. Followed by Ebola, or the other way around. And then, of course, we've got SARS to COVID-19. The Supreme Court of Florida put out 3 pandemic guideline handbooks. And again, they kept updating them. So we've had a manual, as the state court system have had a manual on how to handle a pandemic. When you read the introduction, it basically tells you that they expected 30% of the people of the workforce in the court system to be out, either with contracting a pandemic flu, or in some cases because many of the individuals that were part of the court complement might pass away. As we've seen that COVID has done that. So there were plans. The Supreme Court of Florida issued administrative orders. They halted in-person. We here in the Ninth Circuit were way ahead because we had at least 3 divisions that were betas or test divisions for remote hearings. So all that happened was that we went court-wise to remote, and we had already had e-filing. So you filed from home, from wherever you were, and you filed your documents. No touch, social distancing, way away, no problem. The other thing too is that now the hearings, the only thing that has slowed down is the in-person jury trials. Because again, that needs for folks to come into the courthouse. It needs for folks to be, again, in mass, in a group, be questioned by the judge and by the lawyers. And it's more of a communal together exercise. But I will tell you, hearings are being done in every division, with the exception, I think, of the domestic violence division. But most hearings are being conducted remotely. I can tell you that the benefits that have, or the silver lining, has been a number of unexpected benefits. For example, I can tell you of what was related to me about a child support enforcement hearing where the woman who was asking for child support was herself a beautician. And she was coming via Zoom, but she was doing the hair, doing whatever she did, and still being able to attend at the hearing. So the benefit is this person does not have to take a day off, does not have to lose money, does not have to find parking at the courthouse, and basically she winds up continuing to do what she was doing. That's not all. There was a forklift operator in the same. He was the parent that was being asked to pay more child support. And guess what? He's got his Zoom device on, and he is working still with his, moving his forklift. So again, benefits, yes, we were on it and we were prepared because again, that was something that was planned ahead. And we're lucky. The chief judge that's going to take over, Lisa Munyon, the chief judge has been on the Court Technology Committee for a very long time. So Orange County, Osceola County, the Ninth Circuit is in good shape. We have really used the flexibility that we had and what was planned and put it into work.
And we've also had, since we've been dealing with this pandemic for a year, we've also had government step in and change policies as well. One of the obvious ones is you've got the
federal additional
income, unemployment, and also the payments, the direct payments.
So, eviction moratorium.
Exactly. Moratorium. So how is that impacting things, and how do we back our way out of those things when we don't need them anymore?
Well, Alex is also good at managing real estate or at working, because that's part of what he studied in undergrad.
So it's interesting, backing out of all this additional inflows and now almost saying, I'm coming down off the sugar high, right? The cash high.
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
It goes back to the planning. Hopefully the individuals were planning along the way, looking at what was going out, what was coming in, and saying, hey, what was coming in now from this side may not come in anymore. I need to go back out there and revisit how am I going to, produce that income.
In some cases, landlords that we work with have basically forbeared. In other words, I think that's the right way, the right conjugation of that verb, or forborne. In other words, have instead of collecting the full rent, have collected a portion of the rent, and that's something that we've seen happen from a financial and legal standpoint. That it's okay. It's okay to waive some of those contractual. But that's,
adjust for the time.
Exactly. But that's more what the landlord did, but it was as a result of what government was doing with the eviction moratorium. So what are you going to do? You're going to throw the person out of the house when you can't? Or are you going to go ahead and ease it up? So, yeah.
I want to shift gears just a little bit and talk about planning for a disaster, for the next disaster, pandemic, whatever it may be, and putting ourselves in a better place to be able to weather this kind of downturn in the economically or personally. How do we start out getting a disaster plan in place?
It's interesting. I have some individuals that we were doing disaster planning back in '01. I don't remember the big tech issue about the digit changing from the 2-digit to 4-digit, where we're going to have a big crisis, and
Y2K.
Then Y2K. I was trying to find the acronym. Then 2009, and there are definitely different levels of planning that one should think about or consider. But I got to go back to the documents. If you have some of the basic documents in place, those documents will help you structure around it. How much emergency money should I have? Right? What is the appropriate amount of debt? Should I have any debt at all? Am I on a plan to pay down this debt? Starting off with credit cards, vehicles, things that maybe you're not getting a deduction off your tax return. Then there's limitations now on the real estate tax. So you got to balance all that out. But if you are looking at that, planning along the way and saying, hey, I need to make sure I'm controlling this slowly, then you put yourself in the right path or better position, I think, for those changes.
know where your assets are, know where your trust, your last will and testament. And because we have hurricanes coming every now and again, make sure that they're in a watertight, secure place. I would normally recommend putting it in a safe deposit box, but I wouldn't require, or I wouldn't advise you to do that so long as you know the difficulty sometimes in recovering things from a safe deposit box, which means that you might have to go in and see a judge, a lawyer, a judge, file a petition to get into a safe deposit box if it's somebody else's, you know, a parent or something like that. So again,
if there's a hurricane, the banks are going to be closed. You're not going to get into that safety deposit box.
Point well taken.
The pandemic was a good example of that.
Yeah.
The banks were shut down. They were not allowing individuals in the institution.
Yeah, and who knows if a court order would have gotten them to do that. But the whole idea, though, is you know, think of all the possible options. What we have had, if we want to look at the COVID silver lining, what we have had is we've had a phenomenal opportunity, and I want to say to practice, because we've had to practice being flexible, and we've had to practice doing without. I think one of the things, correct me if I'm wrong, that is out there is that we should plan to have at least a 6 months worth of reserve in terms of cash assets that you can draw from. You know, it reminds me now, I'm thinking of 9/11. When 9/11 came, which was a pretty bad disaster for New York, but we didn't know what was going to happen next. I remember going to the bank and withdrawing cash because we did not know what was going to happen. So again, it's that forward thinking based on experience and making sure that you have cash available.
Well, and I really appreciate both of you being here today and sharing this information, because somebody is being helped, and that's what we're here to do. So thank you so much. And of course, thank you for watching Vital Living Forum. I hope this discussion on financial and legal planning during these times of disaster has been helpful. And if you'd like more information about elder law, estate planning, or financial planning, please check out our other Orange TV episodes. Thanks for watching.